Good morning. Deb Novotny here at Gettysburg National Military Park. We're in the Soldiers National Cemetery, and we're taking a look at the Soldiers National Monument. The cornerstone was laid in 1865, but they actually didn't start working on the building of it until 1866. In 1867, a monument was also dedicated here in the cemetery. Over to my right, your left, the first Minnesota veterans, the surviving members, put up a memorial at the Minnesota clock. So that was put there in 1867. They were still working on this monument, and it won't be finished until the 1st of July, 1869, but I say that with tongue-in-cheek because it really wasn't finished just yet. But they had set that date for the dedication. General George Meade was going to be here. He was the commander here at Gettysburg of the Army of the Potomac. He would give some remarks. The governor of Illinois, his name was Morton, he will give the speech of the day. Henry Ward Beecher was also here. He would be giving the invocation. The Reverend Henry Ward Beecher was the brother of Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. And you might remember from your history class, your history teacher might have told you that Harriet Beecher Stowe did meet Abraham Lincoln, and he supposedly said, "Oh, so you're the little lady that wrote the book that started this great war." I don't know if that's true or not, but history teachers like to tell those kind of stories. I told it myself when I was teaching at Gettysburg High School. Now, the problem with this monument not being finished were these two figures on the back of the monument. They were not here in 1869. They had some problem finding good enough marble that would be the equivalent to the ones on the front. I didn't tell you people this before. All these figures are made of Carrara marble. Carrara, Italy, which he talks. Michelangelo used Carrara marble. So if you've ever seen the David, or the Moses, or the Pietà in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, that's Carrara marble. Actually, from this spot, you can see two places where Carrara marble is. Not only the figures on the Soldiers National Monument, but over behind you in the Evergreen Cemetery, the grave of Jenny Wade. Jenny Wade's sister talked to the people out in Iowa, and they actually raised $1,200 to have a monument placed on Jenny's grave in 1901. It's really easy to find Jenny Wade's grave because there's a large American flag on a flagpole over her grave. That's Carrara marble. The trouble with Carrara marble, though, is that it absorbs pollutants. And these monuments for years here on this memorial and also Jenny Wade's, turning black in many places, some kind of fungus or something. And the park found out the best way to clean it was to use a solution called D2. I understand it's very expensive. Evergreen Cemetery is cleaning some of the old marble monuments over there with the same thing, D2. They have to coat it, and then wait a while and coat it again, and it eventually kills that black fungus. This one is the first major monument that was placed on the battlefield, although it would not be totally complete until August 1869. That's when these two figures will finally get here. I remember some of the old guides telling me a story that one of these two, and I think they said probably was the lady here on my right, actually fell off the ship. And they were loading it in Rome and ended up in the water. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. Sometimes you have to take guide story with a grain of salt. But this lady, she is actually from Roman mythology. Her name is Ceres, Ceres. She is the goddess of plenty. What do you sometimes have for breakfast? Quick breakfast. You have cereal, don't you? That comes from Ceres. She's got a sheaf of wheat in her lap. So America is the land of plenty. You know, many of the immigrants coming to the United States didn't have land, didn't have much at all in the old country. When they came to America, they found so much. They could actually get land with the Homestead Act, if they came after 1862, practically for free out in what we call the Midwest today. So plenty. I love her chair because she has all these neat symbols in it. There is a corn stalk, harvest time, plenty. There's a cornucopia. When do you usually see cornucopias? Thanksgiving time, don't you? So the plenty coming out of the horn of plenty. There's also some musical instruments. I'm not too sure. I think it might be a cello, maybe. There's also a palette, an artist's palette with paint brushes. Because when you don't have to worry when your next meal is coming from, you can devote yourself, possibly if you have the talent, to the arts, music, and painting, sculpting, whatever. Plenty. Ceres. Now, if you look over here to my left, your right, you see a man, and we call him Peace. I remember when I was interpreting this on the tours, when we stopped here in the cemetery, it was usually a lady in the crowd that said, "That's a man. Men, they go to war all the time. They're not peaceful." And I say, yeah, this is rare to have a man personify peace. Might be more to that. I have to do some more investigation on it. But he is a mechanic. He's got a hammer in his hand. In peacetime, you see, you can build. In war, you destroy. He's got the gear of progress at his feet. You make progress in peacetime, you destroy in war. But I think what's really interesting, I just noticed this on the other side of this monument in his chair, he's got a locomotive. And it says Italia on it. Honestly, over 45 years I've been guiding here, and I never noticed the word Italia. And I think I know where that comes from. Because Randolph Rogers, who was the sculptor of these beautiful figures on this monument, he made his home in Rome. I guess at an early age he decided he was going to learn from the masters and want to be where the works of art were and the men who could still do the sculpting, like in the ancients. So Randolph Rogers pretty much lived his latter years in Rome itself. I want to tell you a little bit more about Randolph Rogers. He married and he had a beautiful life with his wife, but she died. And I think he probably was crushed by that, as a lot of spouses are. And he did a beautiful carving on the tombstone for his wife. He knew that he would be buried beside her someday. It's called The Veiled Lady. And he did this actually years before for a family out in Detroit, Michigan. Their name was Joshua Waterman. And I haven't seen that gravestone yet, but if I ever get to Elmwood Cemetery in Detroit, I plan to try to find it. The Veiled Lady. It's a very haunting memorial. And it's got a woman with a veil covered, like the soul was leaving the earth and moving on to the next step in heaven. Well, in 1872, this great American artist living in Rome got a paralytic stroke. He survived, but he could not work at all. He could do no more art, and he lived 10 more years. He died in 1882, and he was buried there beside his wife in the largest cemetery in Rome. Over 1 million people are buried buried in this cemetery. And it was my life's goal to find his grave. First time I went to Rome in 1975, I was on a pilgrimage, and there was no time to go. 1989, no, I couldn't go then either. 2010, I went back to Italy to see the Shroud of Turin, and there was no time to look for it. And then finally, in 2016, a couple of my friends, the guys, Ed and Cheryl Guy, decided to go to Italy on a special pilgrimage, but Ed and I broke away from the group, took a taxi, and got to that cemetery. Now, if there's a million there, how did I find the grave of Randolph Rogers, you might ask? This is a story in itself. A few weeks before I went, I got online, and there's a site called Billions of Graves, and I put a little comment. Does anybody know this cemetery in Rome, and can you help me out? There was an American living in Rome. He had been there for 16 years. He answered me, and he said that he loved that cemetery. He loved walking through the cemetery, and he would find that grave for me. He did, and he sent me pictures. He said, this is the gate. You go through the gate. You walk down the sidewalk. You see the statue of Christ. You make a left turn down that path. You go up these steps. He didn't tell me there were about 25 steps, pretty steep. And he said that's the hardest part of the walk. And then you turn left. He got me right to that grave. I found it in less than 10 minutes. So it was fun finding the grave of Randolph Rogers. But I'm kind of sad that this talent that he had, he lost because of that stroke. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at this monument, and next time you see a monument, it's not just figures, they mean something. And hopefully you can dig what that meaning is if you don't know. Thanks. I'm Deb Novotny, and thanks. Come and visit sometime.